You're listening to 9 Plus, a research podcast from Waterford Institute of Technology. Hello and welcome to the 9 Plus podcast, named as such because it's concerned with activities from level 9 up. Research at postgraduate, doctorate and postdoctorate level. My name is Rob O'Connor. We're tying this episode in with events around International Women's Day, and I'm speaking with 3 female researchers, each of whom is nearing the end of their PhD journey at WIT, and they're due to submit their theses later this year. That's 2022, in case you're listening sometime in the future. On the panel are Aisling McGrath, Madhuri Dadamudi and Orla Hayes, each working across different disciplines. The 3 of them briefly described their research work and told the story of how they ended up where they are professionally today. Hint, there's lots of unexpected left-hand turns along the road. They also spoke about some of the issues affecting female researchers and offered advice for those coming behind them. As is customary, we began the chat with the women introducing themselves and describing the work that they do.
So I'm Aisling McGrath and I am in my final year and I hope to submit in June, fingers crossed. But my research is around men's health. Specifically, I work with the Irish Men's Sheds Association and we try to design and implement programmes that can engage men in the men's sheds themselves. So for anyone who's not familiar with the men's sheds, they're community-based grassroots organisations where men just come together to, I suppose, get a sense of purpose, and socialise and so on. So I suppose my research has 2 levels. It's around identifying what works best for men, so working very closely with them in the sheds. And then also looking at it from an implementation science lens. So we're trying to promote the systematic uptake of the programme, which is called Sheds for Life, in the sheds. Because, often when we're trying to translate research into the real world, there's a lot of contextual things that happen. So we try to get that done from the outset. So that's a brief snapshot, really.
Madhuri, could you introduce yourself and describe your work?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Madhuri. I'm from India and I'm in final year of my PhD and I'm working on drug delivery to the eye. So usually back of the eye diseases such as age-related macular degeneration or diabetic retinopathy are being treated using intravitreal injections. So where the injection is given into the eye to deliver the drug to the site of the action. So we are trying to replace these eye injections with the topical formulation. So a topical formulation is something which can be applied on the eye. It is a needleless and patient-friendly treatment option. So our eye is designed in such a way that it restricts the entry of foreign bodies. In the same way, it restricts the entry of drugs. So the drug can't pass from front of the eye to the back of the eye. So I'm trying to design a nanoparticle where we incorporate the drug in it and it has a potential to pass from front to the back of the eye. So basically, we are working on patient-friendly treatment options.
Wow. And I can imagine, I have no idea about this, but obviously injecting into the eye is clearly very invasive. So
it's invasive, painful, and it is associated with serious side effects such as retinal detachment. And also it is very painful for patients to recover from those injections. And according to recent survey, 1 in 4 patients are not coming for the follow-up injections. So mostly they're ending up losing their vision. So I'm particularly concentrated on age-related macular degeneration, where people over 50 lost their central vision.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Orla, if we can go to yourself, introduce yourself and the work that you're doing.
Perfect. I'm Orla Hayes. I'm from here in Waterford and I'm in, like the ladies, I'm in my final year of my PhD. I'm hoping to again submit in June. So my work looks at data for businesses, and when I tell people that I'm talking about data, they kind of get afraid and they're like, oh no, a new Cambridge Analytica. But in reality, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at how small businesses in particular can use the information that's available to them to make better marketing campaigns. So I'm particularly interested in a concept called the omnichannel, which is kind of a new marketing strategy or strategic incarnation where we're concentrating on online and offline channels. We're looking at how we can harness the data from online, harness the data from offline, and how we can make better marketing campaigns across the board for not just the business themselves, but to enhance customer experiences. So yeah, that's my research in a nutshell.
Excellent. Now, so quick question: do you know each other prior to this conversation? Have you met?
We've met briefly, but we don't really know. I think COVID got in the way of a lot of that, Rob, too, because we were all working from home for so long.
So I can imagine somebody working on a PhD or masters or whatever. It's hard at the best of times. It must have been particularly difficult actually during COVID. Did you feel kind of cut off from the community, Aisling?
Yeah, I think it was. You know, I suppose with me, I was working with the men's sheds as well, so I had a little bit of support there in terms of the staff, but. It's a really lonely road when you're doing a postgrad, I think, and people get it. And even though the projects are so, as you can hear, so different, they understand, I suppose, how isolating it can be and all the challenges. So it's lovely to have a sounding board. So even those impromptu coffees and things where you can go and just vent about it all, you know, you would definitely miss that. Absolutely, yeah.
And how about for yourself, Madhuri?
Yeah, for me, having a toddler at home and me and my husband both working online, it's really challenging for us at the beginning. But then we slowly got used to the schedule and managed. But my lab work got affected because I'm a science-based researcher. So most of my work is in lab, but I have finished my transfer thesis, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Orla, how about yourself?
I suppose I was one of those people up in the office trying to get people to like go on Zoom calls with me, being like, "Come on, guys, let's have a cup of coffee." It'll be great fun. But in reality, like I started my data collection the day that everything shut up. So literally, it was me trying to get interviews. So I was supposed to do paired interviews. So I was supposed to do interviews with customers and I was supposed to do interviews with marketing managers. So it ended up that I couldn't get the type of interviews that I wanted to get. So I had to completely change that. And then it was just emailing people being like, "Hey, I'm Orla, do you want to talk about data on Zoom?" Whereas you can imagine like once people see that and people are already panicking about trying to keep their small businesses afloat, that they didn't want to talk about it. So I ended up thinking that it was going to take like 3-4 months to collect my data and it took 1.5 years. So yeah, it was a bit of a challenge, definitely 100%.
Like I can see the other two of you nodding, as in like this extended data collection is obviously a repeated pattern, perhaps.
Well, for me, what happened was, I suppose I was lucky that I was able to collect a lot of my data at the beginning. So I spent a lot of time in the men's sheds. It was almost kind of ethnographical. I was just with them all the time. So I got loads of data, but I was following them up to 1 year. And then COVID hit and all the sheds closed. And actually what was the hardest part of that was seeing the impact that it had on the men. I was able to follow up with them, but they lost their shed. And we had already implemented a health and wellbeing program, and they had gotten so much from Sheds for Life, which is what the program is called. But a lot of that then reverted back because the men who were going there because they were lonely and isolated were even more isolated, and it was just a bit crap, really. I don't know how else to say it. So that was hard.
Well, let's ask about where each of your individual motivations came from and how you ended up where you are today. So, Aisling, you're talking about men's sheds, so why don't we just start with that one? How did you end up working on a PhD around men's sheds? I said, no, this is a big question. I know that.
Yeah, so I suppose I had been doing my undergrad in public health promotion, and I was interested.
You did that in WIT, was it?
I did that in WIT, yeah. And I was really interested in the gender-specific health promotion stuff and kind of around gender equality and, you know, understanding that I suppose it shouldn't be an us and them, like women and versus men. It should be that we should be trying to balance the scales for both sides. And I suppose understanding the differences, like why are men not able to talk as openly as women about how they are. And I do think that narrative is changing. But I was interested, also knowing there was complicated men in my own life, you know. And so an opportunity came up for me in my final year to do my thesis in evaluating a men's health program that was actually running in Clonmel, and I spent a lot of time down there, and I really, really loved that. And so it just had worked really well, and I had built a really nice relationship with these men, and I had been doing that with it was Niamh Murphy and Noel Richardson, who you're familiar with. And so then this opportunity came up that they were interested in. Sheds for Life was a program that was kind of in embryonic stage, I suppose, you know, and it was about wanting to advance that and what we needed to do. So I wrote a proposal to the Irish Research Council, who have been fantastic, and that was successful. So Niamh and Noel guided me with that, and it was funded, so we got 4 years funding, and I said, hey, like, I'm going to go for this. So that was really it, and I was always really fond of the men's sheds, so I was delighted then to be able to start that process, you know.
So it'd be fair to say that something that happened in your final year of your undergrad directly impacted your decision to carry on with postgraduate work and the specific project that you're working with, yeah?
Absolutely. It was kind of a snowball thing, really, you know, and that's one thing I think was really important that I would say to anyone who's interested in research. I might be jumping ahead a bit, but get involved in things because you just don't know. You know, something might seem so inconsequential or small, but it can absolutely blow up then from there, you know.
And okay, so Madhuri, how did you end up where you are? Okay, so you said you're originally from India. How did you end up here in Waterford? What attracted you to WIT?
Yeah, actually, since my school days, I'm fascinated with the concepts of science. And I also used to discuss with my sister, who is now a cardiologist, about medicines and how they work in our body. And also, I'm more interested in pharmaceutical sciences, and I have chosen that subject as my undergrad. And after finishing my undergrad, I have motivated more towards research and moved to UK for my master's by research, where I worked on oral delivery of insulin. Actually, my grandmom used to have diabetes. She used to take regular insulin injections. So I'm very personally connected to that project, and I have written my own research proposal and applied for a funding which I got in Kingston University. So I worked on oral delivery of insulin, like patient-friendly treatment options for diabetes. And then I got married and I got a kid, but that didn't stop me from my interest towards research. And then I moved back to India after my master's by research. Then I thought it's time to apply for a PhD. And I have seen a WIT-funded project in findaphd.com and I applied for it and I got it. That's the first project I applied and I got it. I'm very happy for that. And this is also very related to my previous project, like working on patient-friendly treatment options, because now people are suffering, like people aged over 50, they are having painful treatment options. So we really need to work on those. So even with the advancements in science, they don't have topical formulations. So they have been taking intravitreal injections and they're suffering. And AMD is the leading cause of blindness. So it really moved me. So I moved with my family to Ireland when my daughter is 8 months. Now she's 4. So I think at the beginning it is very challenging finding childcare and the expenses. And we moved here and my husband don't have a job when we moved here. And slowly he got a job here and we joined her in a child support. And so there is a lot of support available. I think it's possible. So if we think we can do, we will.
Yeah, but that I'm sure that was very difficult. Moving to a new country, small child. Look, small child is difficult at the best of times. For mine, moving to a new country and then also engaging in this, PhD work, and it's not trivial what you're describing. So I can understand the challenges that might have been there. Yeah. I mean, and I hate to talk about COVID, but so you're here just a little over 3 years.
Yeah, I'm here since 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you have a support network in place when all of this kicked off in May of 2020?
No.
Okay.
Because there's no childcare during COVID time.
Yeah.
So we had to manage with her, but my supervisor is very supportive. So I used to adjust my timings according to my husband's work schedule, and as it is work from home, it added. It is beneficial for me because I can take care of her and also work, and we both used to figure out timings and etc.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
If I was wearing a hat, I'd take it off to you. Orla, so the same question. So where are you coming from? How? So you said you're originally from Waterford, are you? So did you study in WIT?
I did, yeah. So I suppose my route to PhD life is a bit odd. In 5th and 6th year, I decided that I was going to leave school and not even do my Leaving Cert.
Okay.
So I had a horrible experience of just terrible anxiety, a lot of bullying when I was in secondary school, and I decided no. When I finally did my Leaving Cert, I had a brilliant teacher in the Mercy Secondary School and she encouraged me, okay, do your Leaving Cert. And then I was like, I'm going to join the Guards. That was my first option. I signed up, went into the station, did all my forms, did all my tests. I was going to be a Guard. But then I was like, I'm going to wait a few months and go into the next intake. And at that time I was strapped for cash. I said, I'll go and work in a random shop in town. And my manager happened to be an ex-marketing manager from Cadbury's.
Okay.
And he gave me so much responsibility. He allowed me to work with all the merchandisers. He allowed me to do all the ordering. He allowed me to work with Musgraves and that kind of thing. And basically in the space of like 6 months, I fell in love with business and marketing, and it was so strange. And literally I was like, okay, I'm going to do my CAO again. I'm going to go and I'm going to join marketing. And I have absolutely adored it. I did my undergrad here, marketing, advertising and digital media, which is now marketing and online media. But yeah, so when I got to the final year in my undergrad, I decided that I didn't want to leave education. I decided I was enjoying it too much. So I jokingly made an offhand comment about how I'm going to be a doctor someday. And then my research centre, Rycon, ended up having a position for a PhD student. And they said, hey, do you want to apply? Do you want to put together a proposal? And I was like, brilliant. I absolutely would love to. And at the time I was working in a small business here in Waterford. It was me doing the marketing for 35 different territories around the world. And I got this idea from working there that like there was issues using data, there was issues using multiple marketing channels, particularly for like resource strapped small businesses that have maybe like no budget or maybe just one marketing manager trying to deal with everything. And that became my PhD. And 9 years later, I'm still here in Witt.
I know, this place is like, it's like the mafia. You think you're out and pulls you back in.
So buy in, buy out.
Wow, okay. So again, there's three very distinct stories there, but I mean, a common thread. Now, this is just a glib observation, is that the three of you obviously developed a passion and there's a personal connection to each of your stories. So is that... How important is that personal connection to research is probably my question.
Oh, massively. I think if you're going to dedicate 4 or 5 years of your life to a project, you have to do something that, not even that you like, you love. Because I've seen people come in and do 2 years and then cut off at a master's because they're like, I just can't spend another 2 years of my life studying this. They either got funding for a project that they don't enjoy, or they took up a subject that they were like, oh, I loved it years ago, but I have no interest in carrying it out now. So I think you have to have that like inner curiosity, that inner passion for something to actually spend all those hours a week researching and talking to people about it and writing papers on it and investigating your particular subject.
Madhuri, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think if we have a personal connection, it motivates us more. And also, I think, as I'm from medical background, if we read about how patients are suffering, so how our project is applicable to them, we'll be more motivated. So we need to look into bright future. So how this research in future gets into place, like how it helps, how it improves the well-being of people. So that motivates me more. I sometimes read about patients' experiences and attend some patient-related conferences where the people who suffer from the disease I'm working on share their experiences and how their personal life is getting affected. That also motivates me a lot. Yeah.
And like Aisling, so you're working with Men's Sheds. Clearly there's a lot of emotional issues there. I'm sure you've experienced working with people in distress, and I'm not looking for details about that, but it must be satisfying is maybe the word that I'm looking for, to work with something that will directly affect and help people in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I suppose I never envisioned when I started out that I'd work in men's health. It just seems, but yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a real sense of reward is probably what I would say when you see that it is having a direct impact. And in the same breath with that, it can become quite stressful when things aren't going right, like with COVID and that you can't help but get pulled into this stuff, that you really start to fall in love with the whole thing when you see the impact that it's having firsthand, and seeing men talk about their mental health. Like, these are older, more traditional men that probably never would have even considered what the concept of mental health even meant, So absolutely, there's a huge sense of reward in it, and it does drive you on when you can remind yourself of that. And there are times that you absolutely hate it too, that it can be a long road. It's a roller coaster. I think the ladies would probably agree with me. So you've got lots of ups and downs.
My next question is about what's your day-to-day like, but I'm not even sure if that's a fair question, because maybe there is no day-to-day. You're shaking your head, nodding your head. Is there a day-to-day? Madhuri, do you have...
Actually, my day-to-day works like some part of time I devote to see the advancements in my field, obviously, like what is going on out there, because I want to make sure that I'm doing something novel which adds to the science database, and then I'll go and start my lab work. And sometimes I'll have a long day experiments like 12-hour time point and all. Some days I have short experiments where I'll get time to write about the work I have done and all. That's all. Yeah, and when I get back home, I won't have any time to spend time on my work because I'll be busy with my daughter.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure I'll utilize my time here in college.
And Orla, do you have a day-to-day?
No. I think I tell, like, when people start in our office, we have a shared office in the library, and when people start and they're always like, asking for like starter advice or early advice, and I'm like, your PhD can go from 0 to 90. You can have weeks where you literally sit at that table and you're just staring at a page for hours on end, and nothing's getting done, you're panicking, you just can't find the motivation. And then you have weeks when you're at 90%, like 99% as well sometimes, when you're panicking about papers and stuff like that. But it can literally go from having, I'm just reading some papers, to I'm reading papers, I'm writing, I'm preparing for a class, I'm preparing for a conference. So that's what I love about it as well, though. It's no day's the same. No 2 weeks will ever look the exact same. You're always meeting new people, talking to new people, learning about new things, doing new things, learning new skills. So yeah.
And with your research around the omni-channel marketing, if I'm making a bags of it, please correct me. Like, are you dealing directly with small business owners, and are they testing something that you're trying?
So in Tightly, the research that I'm doing at the moment, I was interviewing marketing managers.
Okay.
So I was really digging into what's actually going on in the industry, how small businesses are actually using their data, how they're creating marketing campaigns. So I interviewed small businesses across Ireland about their experiences with using data, their experiences with using different marketing strategies, how to use online channels, how to use offline channels.
And would these businesses have been in any particular field?
No, so in Tightly, I wanted to just look at one industry. I was going to just do pharmaceuticals because we have a lot of pharmaceutical companies here in Waterford, but instead I decided to make it a bit more widely applicable to different industries. So I interviewed everyone from people creating VR experiences to auctioneers. Okay. Literally a little bit of absolutely everything. I think it was really, really interesting because I got a huge range of like experiences. So I'm hopeful that it puts into like good and interesting data, the fact that there's such a wide range. And
Aisling, day to day, does it exist?
It doesn't, Rob. And the thing that I love that's what I love about it, I should say. It's just, I'm not a fan of monotony and routine. So while it's challenging, it's exciting. You'll never be doing the same thing twice, you know what I mean? So towards the end, it can get a little bit intense. And we're all probably in the same boat now where we're trying to write furiously to get to the finish line. But it was so exciting being out on the road. You could be out doing data collection one day, and then even analysing the data, which can seem so boring, actually gets quite exciting. So the nerd in you definitely comes out in force. So no day to day as such. It's always a bit, but it's the excitement of it.
So is Niamh your supervisor?
Niamh is my supervisor.
So this is Niamh Murphy, and she was a guest on the podcast a couple of previous episodes ago. So you go listen to that because she's great. Niamh mentioned a thing, and I'm going to I can't remember the name she put on it, but the concept was it's about the intangible work of research. So it's this kind of mediation or being this kind of connective tissue that you don't see. And it's very hard to quantify. So in the case here, you've just talked about driving around. So I'm sure you're driving up and down to men's sheds and you're talking to people, which may not necessarily, you can't put that directly into a spreadsheet. You know, and I'm sure it's the same for if you're talking to small businesses all around the country, and if you're reading papers and you know, a 12-hour experiment and a 3-hour, you know, it's very hard to quantify many of these things. So, I mean, how do you feel about that? You know, I know that's a very broad question, you know, but what are your thoughts on that idea of the intangible aspects of research and what you're doing?
Well, I think it's something it's really important, and I suppose from my own perspective with the implementation science, it's trying to capture that as well, so that people can replicate research. And I think that's what's really important. That, you know, often on paper, I could describe Sheds for Life as just being this 10-week program that ran. But all of the stuff that went on behind that. So we spent literally months out in the sheds trying to build relationships, which was so important because the trust piece, because it's a tightly knit environment, you know. Yeah. And there's so much potential in the sheds, and I feel like I need to say that too, that I'd never want to make any of those men feel labelled or stigmatised. They're very capable, you know, and they've got a whole range of expertise. Yeah. But spending a lot of time is really important so that they can understand that it's to help them and that they're pioneers of this. voice, you know, and so there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on, and I am trying to capture that in my research now, so that other people can maybe replicate that and learn from that too. So it's important that we as researchers, I think, try to do that, but it is very difficult. You can't quantify it. You can't get a mean score. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you just have to try and write as best as you can to get that information down, but it's definitely a challenge, Rob.
Yeah. So will you be including that in your thesis? You know, like stuff about you drove here, rang this person, they didn't answer, rang them again, they didn't answer, but I rang them a fifth time and they answered, and then they agreed to meet, or you know.
Possibly not in that level of detail, but I suppose what I'd be trying to highlight is that there's a foundational layer to these things, you know, that you need to get things in place. So we even talk a lot about gender-specific strategies, so ways of engaging men. All of that stuff is so important as a precursor to all of these programs, and it's really important that we try to get that out there. And Noel is my co-supervisor as well, so he's been great in trying to capture that too. And so implementation science, again, is just a way you can kind of apply a framework, and we look at it on a much broader kind of ecological model. So it's not just what happened at the individual level, it's all the things that are interplaying in the wider system. So the policies, the funding, the partners, the people who have the capacity to deliver these things. It's trying to capture all of that. So it's very messy.
Yeah.
It's very complex. And I'm not sure how I'm going to get it all on paper yet, but that's the plan.
I'm thinking of, there's a book I read years ago, was it Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency? I think it's going to be Ashley McGrath's Holistic Thesis, data collection or something like that. Orla, would you recognise that? I mean, you mentioned about trying to deal with small businesses who, you know, maybe are very busy, or there's one person. Would you recognise something similar to what Aisling has described there?
I think so, yeah. One of the things that my supervisors told me at the start was to write a reflective journal. And I was like, oh yeah, cool, I'll write a reflective journal. But now that I did once a week, so I literally have this little pink journal up in the office, and once a week I'll jot down some notes, or after an interview I jot down some notes. And now that I read back over 3 or 4 years of notes, I'm like, oh, this is so valuable, because I know what I was feeling in the moment. I know what I was thinking in the moment. I know kind of like those intricacies of the conversations that I was having. I'm a very visual person, so I have dyslexia. I'm not very good at, well, I'm good at words, but like I'm not the best of it. So I'm a really visual learner. So I analyse my entire theses on paper. So if you go up to my office at the moment, there's a roll of wallpaper with literally charts of what I was doing that day, charts of who I was talking to, charts of the process. So I talked to John today, I talked to Mary this day, Mary said this, that linked to John. So it's literally all visual. So I think there is ways and means of like getting that connection and getting that kind of intangible stuff down. It's just about thinking beyond the kind of traditional, I have to write it down, reflection journals, visualizations. They're all brilliant tactics, 100%.
Yeah, so I'm getting visions of like a crime movie and a map and a serial killer
100%.
with this. Yeah, is this okay? So you're a detective.
Yeah, people come into my office and they're like, if anyone walk up the stairs, literally it's laid out on the floor, and people are like, why do you have wallpaper on the floor? And I'm like, no, that's my thesis.
There's a link back to, you said you wanted to be in the Guards as well, so
yeah, I'm solving crimes.
Right, okay, my next question is about what you think are the biggest barriers facing female researchers and what you have encountered. And so look, Orla, we've just been speaking to you, so we go back to you again if that's okay. What do you think are the biggest barriers facing female researchers? What are the biggest barriers that you've experienced?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, firstly, funding. I suppose I came in as an unfunded student. I funded myself for the first 2 years. I worked in merchandising for some of the big supermarkets around Waterford and South East, and just trying to find funding. But I suppose that's not just a female researcher thing. That's kind of across the board, particularly in certain disciplines. It's harder. But in terms of like discipline specific, so looking at business specific, I suppose it's been taken seriously.
Right.
If you think about sometimes if you're interviewing people in the C-suite, or you're interviewing individuals that kind of have this expectation of what a researcher is, have this expectation of what a business person is, they might not think it's a young girl coming in and asking questions about big topics. Yeah. So I've had experiences where I've gone and talked to people and they're like, oh, like they wouldn't treat you the same as they treat your male counterpart in that sense. So you just have to hold your ground and learn to like show your abilities through your work. So I think,
But that's again another potential intangible aspect of this that
100%.
That is not being captured.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. It's in my reflective journal somewhere.
Madhuri, is what do you find are the biggest barriers facing female researchers?
I think we need to speak up. Sometimes we have that in our mind, but we won't speak up and discuss with our family. But if we really want to be in research career, or if we really want to continue our education, we need to speak up, and definitely our family will support us if we convey how important that is to us. And also sometimes we might be thinking like, we have kids, can we manage kids and research? Sometimes we'll have a long days and all. But I think both men and women are equally responsible to take care of the kids. And also we have support system in place. For example, we have Waterford Women Community where we have affordable childcare there, and we also have different fundings to apply. So whether it's men or women, if you really want to be in research field, I think you just need to move forward utilizing the support system you have. We have research support unit, we have different fundings from IRC, and we have WIT funding, and you can also speak to your lecturers who have connections with research as well. So I think everyone is so helpful and supportive here.
Yeah. But I mean, okay, I'm only mentioning because you brought up that you have a small daughter. I mean, childcare must be a massive issue that disproportionately affects female researchers.
Yeah, it's expensive, but fortunately, I have a very helpful and supportive people around me. Even my daughter's friends' parents offered help for me. Like they wanted to mind my daughter as well, like with a very reasonable finance. And also, I think we just need to reach out. That's all.
Yeah. And are there any suggestions you might have for how things could potentially be better?
Actually, unless until one of my friend told there is a Waterford Women Community, I don't know that they will offer affordable childcare facilities based on the income we get. So I think we just need to find out the supports we have. So a lot of people don't know what supports we have. I think we just need to reach out and find out and utilize those.
Yeah, because I mean, I have children, and particularly when they were small in kind of creche, they're all in school now. But I mean, it wasn't like having a second mortgage. It was like having a third mortgage. We spent more on childcare than we did on our mortgage of our house. It was very significant, and particularly when my wife came back from maternity leave. Okay, look, she was essentially working. We were working to pay childcare, but it was very difficult for a number of years.
It's very difficult, and we couldn't save any money because half of it goes to childcare. But I think once we finish our PhD, there is a bright future out there. So I think we just need to manage.
Yeah. Aisling, same kind of question to you. What do you think are the biggest barriers facing female researchers? What have been the biggest barriers that you've encountered?
Well, I think it's definitely complex. There's lots of social constructs that are still out there, assumptions that are made or stereotypes. And I suppose as a female researcher in a predominantly male environment, there was, some challenges with that, but, nothing that you couldn't overcome. I suppose in general for females, it was, as you said, Rob, I mean, I became a single mom in my last year of college, and right. I thought, Jesus, am I crazy to go and do this PhD? Because obviously finances is a huge consideration. How are you going to live, and all those things. And then there's a guilt. There's a guilt as a mom as well, when you're trying to pour yourself into this work, and, you have this cute little child looking up at you and wanting you to spend all their time. And COVID was very challenging. So that's definitely. And then as a woman as well, I had this conversation with and I think it's generally for women that are maybe aspirational in any sense. Your biological clock and all that too, like you have to make sacrifices. Do you want to have more children? Is it something that's feasible? How old are you going to be by the time you establish yourself in your career? Is it okay? Is it socially acceptable then for you to go ahead and, get pregnant and things like that? It's not something I'm planning, but I did have to make those kind of considerations. So that's definitely something. And I think women still very much have multiple roles that we need to contend with too. So, coming home and facing like a crazy house and all of those things, as well as trying to do your research. I know that a lot of people work very well in the evening, but for me personally, I am just a zombie. My brain is mushy peas at that stage of the day. So there's a lot of juggling, Definitely a thing that what I would say as well, and I think it's really important to mention this, is strong women should empower women. It's not that it can't be done. It's just that you need to have a good role model as well. And I do remember, and I'll even use this example, Niamh Murphy, when I started my undergrad, I didn't even really know what a PhD was, to be honest. I wasn't coming from a background of people that had a lot of college education either. And I remember just thinking, she is definitely someone that I would look up to, you know, and she was great. She was a great advocate and she really empowered me. And I think if you can get somebody that will empower you, then it opens your mind to your capabilities as a woman and a researcher and all of those things as well.
Yeah. Whilst Aisling was talking there, I could see Orla Maduri nodding in agreement. So, I mean, was there anything there that particularly echoed with either of you, Maduri?
Yeah, actually, my supervisor, Larry Fitzhenry, he got 3 kids when he's doing his PhD, and he always motivates me. And he also gives advices how to manage personal and work-life balance. I think we really, as Aisling said, we really need to have a role model, which gives us more confidence and motivation, like to manage both.
Yeah. And Orla, would you agree?
I think in terms of like the role model thing that Aisling was talking about there, we need to see more women in senior level in academia.
Yeah.
So if you look at the research, literally when it starts to go to professor level, senior lecturer, the levels of women start to drop off, and it seems to be a lot of males in like the C-suite version of academia, which is like higher level roles, like presidents of colleges and even professor roles, if you think about it. So I think when we see that as individuals, when we see that as young girls in undergraduate, we see a professor as a female. It's giving us that educational role model. Like I only came to college itself because I had a really good female role model in secondary school. So I think as we continue on that level, we should continue to have those role models that are encouraging us to like reach as high as we can go, like in education.
You mentioned the term C-suite and you used it already. I don't know what that means. What does it mean?
So the C-suite are people that are individuals in a business that have a title that starts with C.
Oh,
so
like CEO, CTO.
CEO,
okay.
COO, yeah.
Okay, very good. There you go. Every day is a school day.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Always be learning.
Yeah. Okay, the final question, and I give it to each of you, is what would be your one bit of advice for somebody who's thinking about getting into research? Whoever wants to take it first, go for it.
I would say, the role model thing is really important, but also you can be your own champion too. It's a challenging road, but you need to kind of catch that imposter syndrome and just tell it where to go. Like, you're going to have it. Fake it till you make it. You know, believe in yourself. It's so rewarding. It's a crazy ride, but you'll get there. Like, I just think if you really want it, go for it, and you'll figure out the rest as you go. Ask for forgiveness later is what I'd say,
Brilliant. Maduri?
Yeah, I agree with Aisling as well. When I joined my PhD, I used to miss my daughter a lot because she's just 8-9 months like that. And I used to struggle, the stress in PhD, ups and downs, experiments not working. But then I slowly got used to it. Like working under stress. If experiment doesn't work, it's okay, I'll try it again. I'll figure out things. So I think if you really want to do, you can manage it. Yeah.
And Orla, your bit of advice for aspiring researchers, or maybe somebody who hasn't even thought about it?
I think be curious. I grew up as someone that had my head in the books, so I would go to the library every single Friday and just bring home like 10-15 books, and I think that inspired that kind of interest in learning in me. So even now I'm like, I'll ask the ladies, oh, what are you doing in research? Tell me all about your research. Like, I'm constantly curious and ask for help. Like, there's so much support here in WIF. There's so much support in our little research community. If you're having trouble with a specific element of your research, if you're having trouble personally, if you're having trouble like financially, that kind of thing, ask for help, because there's so many people that have been there, done that. There's so many people in your network. Like, create a good network around you. Like, we have the Research Postgrad Forum here in WIT, which is like a group of representatives from each of the schools, and we try and represent the different schools, and we try and have meetups when we possibly can, and our office has like a shared group chat, and just having those things that you mentioned previously, like going for coffee, ask for help, network, get yourself like into that little community, be part of the research community, and it really, really, really helps.
Okay, well, I do actually have one last question, but it's really just a kind of a shout out. If somebody wanted to find out more about your work, your research, what's the best place to go? So Orla, we'll start with yourself.
I'm on Twitter, so I'm Orla Nihei. So it's ORLANIHAODH on Twitter. And that's where I'm at.
Brilliant. Madhuri?
Yeah, my Twitter handle is Madhuri Krishna. So, and I'm happy to say that we have a research group of researchers working on drug delivery technologies, and we are equal, like 5 of female researchers and 5 of male researchers. So there's a good gender balance, and I'm happy to see more researchers in science. Things are improving actually.
Wonderful.
So yeah, I'm happy to share that.
Brilliant. And Aisling?
I'm trying to remember my Twitter
Well, it doesn't have to be Twitter. It can be anything.
Yeah, you can email me even aisling.mcgrath@wit.ie. So it's AISLING. And I would just like to say, if anyone is even wanting to know, not even specifically about my research, or just wants to kind of, use me as a sounding board to see maybe what's the process like, absolutely. I'd love to be able to, be there to support other people, because I've had great support myself. So I'd be happy to do that if anyone has any questions.
Wonderful. Well, Aisling McGrath, Madhuri Dandamundi and Orla Hayes, thank you very much for speaking with me today. It's been very insightful, and touch wood, the 3 of you will be Dr. Aisling, Dr. Orla and Dr. Madhuri very, very soon. Cheers.
Great, Mila. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the 9 Plus podcast. We can see the audience growing as each episode is released. If you enjoyed what you heard or you found it some way interesting, please consider leaving us a kind review on the podcast app you use. You can stay up to date with news of the podcast on Twitter at 9pluspodcast. That's digit 9 PLUS podcast. And we'll be back with another episode next week.